Hello, everyone. Today we have a special guest, Meredith, who not only reads a ton of books, but is also writing one. And today she's going to help us analyze the new Hunger Games prequel, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes.
Hi everybody, I'm Meredith. I just started a channel where I mostly talk about books. I've been kind of heading in a video essay direction, but I'm gonna reel it back a little bit. So far I've made one on the first 300 pages of Les Mis and the original Hunger Games book, and I'm working on one about this book, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So if you're looking for a more like in-depth analysis on the new book, then definitely check out my channel.
The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes takes place 64 years before the original Hunger Games trilogy. We follow 18-year-old Coriolanus Snow, which you know him as President Snow, who's preparing to make his mark as a mentor in the 10th annual Hunger Games. He mentors the female tribute from District 12, a singer named Lucy Gray. Her charm and wit confuse him, as he's always believed the districts to be beneath the capital. His desire to succeed conflicts with his newfound feelings for his tribute, and we watch as he battles these demons on screen.
We're going to start with some general non-spoiler thoughts on the movie, and then we'll get into spoilers later on, but don't worry, we'll give a clear warning so you'll know exactly when we'll transition from no spoilers to spoilers.
So, new YouTuber Meredith Novaco, what did you think about this new Hunger Games movie?
So I definitely went into it with a different perspective from you because I had read the book beforehand. So I think for me, some of the things that I noticed was that they did a really good job consolidating everything. In the book, there were a lot of scenes that took place in a few different places, and what they did, which I thought was really smart, was they just took all those scenes and kind of condensed them down. I do feel like they lost a little bit of the message from the book. So in the book, they talk a lot about like the 3 C's. So like chaos, control, and the social contract, which is all stuff that I go a lot more in depth on in my video. Definitely spoilers though, so if you don't want spoilers. But I feel like they didn't explore that much in the movie. It was a lot more like about the actual plot and a lot less about what I think Suzanne Collins wanted the message to be of the book. So that was a little bit disappointing for me. I wanted to see them play that out on screen a little bit more. Overall, I liked it, but I went in definitely already understanding what was gonna happen. So I think that gave me a little bit of an edge. I think overall, they made it more entertaining than the book is, because the book definitely drags at points. It's really long. It's like 500 pages. But in making it more entertaining, they lost some of the character of the book itself.
Yeah, so like Meredith said, I went into the movie completely blind. Like I've read the original trilogy, enjoyed those movies, but I did not read this book. And I would say, and I'm curious, if anyone has seen this movie and you haven't read the book, were you confused at any points? I felt like I went into the movie and it was very interesting because they kind of spoon feed you a lot of the information, and they also simultaneously don't give you enough information about what's going on. So it's like this really weird like area to be in while you're digesting this movie. And it made me not enjoy it as much as I wanted to. Like I was really looking forward to watching this movie. I see it like it has really high ratings from like the audience. So I was really looking forward to sitting and watching this, but I didn't actually get to enjoy it as much as I wanted to. I really think I should have read the book, but let me know if you didn't and you still enjoyed the movie. I'm just missing something. I don't know.
It's worth noting that our third friend that went with us had read like the Wikipedia plot summary and that she also liked it. So I feel like if you knew the plot already going in, then you liked it, but maybe if you don't, then it might be confusing. Because I definitely know what you mean about some of the names. They said names really fast and they just kind of introduced people and moved on, and it wasn't always clear. So as far as how it compares to the original Hunger Games, from a book perspective, I felt like this book was way more gruesome than the original Hunger Games book. I very recently reread the original book because I made a video about it, but that one very much felt like a YA. The original Hunger Games book feels very much like a young adult novel, and this one had a lot of gore in it to the point where I'm not sure it would still be classified as young adult. As far as the adaptations of the original movie, it's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember very similarly them being good at paring things down. And I feel like it's because Suzanne Collins herself is a screenwriter. So she wrote a lot of children's TV before she wrote the Hunger Games book, and she was heavily involved in the making of all of these. And so I feel like she always does a really good job of keeping what's important and leaving out the things that don't necessarily matter from a screen perspective, which a lot of authors really struggle with. And obviously the original movies were huge, and the original books were huge too. They sold 17 million copies before the first movie even came out, which is insane. So I feel like it fell a little flat in comparison, but I also don't necessarily fault Suzanne Collins for that, because I think some authors really suffer from doing such a good job at some point that the expectation is on them to always outdo themselves.
Okay, so I want to get into some of the technical things that I particularly didn't like during the movie. So one of them is the characters not really having chemistry. And I felt like this was prevalent throughout all of the characters interacting, where even during scenes between the friends of Corey and Sejanus, like it just felt to me like they were reading their lines. And even between Corey and Lucy Gray, they just didn't really have much chemistry. She just kind of said stuff like, I'm a mystery. Like she just like kind of spoke in riddles. And I'm like, it literally had me sitting there during the movie like, why can't we write dialogue of like normal people talking? Do you know what I mean? Like, why does everything have to be either a quip or something mysterious, or like, why can't people just talk to each other in the movie, you know? Again, like I said before, I felt like the movie was very spoon-feedy at times, and it's strange because I was confused the first like 20 to 40 minutes of the movie, because we're introduced with like a flashback that says like, what, 3 years after the war or something like that. I'm already confused again. And it shows Corey and his cousin as kids, and then it immediately says part 1, whatever the title of that was, because I forgot it already. And then it goes to him being an adult, and I was like, okay, are we looking at his dad? Like, or is it still him? Like, I was just so confused, because at some points they're like, this is my cousin Tigress, and other times it's like, we also don't know like what year it is. Like, what's the vibe here? But like halfway through the movie, he also looks a lot like Eminem. So there's that.
I will say on the characters not having chemistry that I feel like that actually comes from the book, and I don't know if they did that intentionally or not, but the only character he has chemistry with in the book is his cousin, and that is also true in the movie. They have a weird relationship. When the book starts out, Coriolanus and his family are not financially doing well, and on like the second page he has like a whole internal monologue moment where he's like, I hope Tigress isn't out there selling her body. She'd definitely have takers. And then he like goes off about her body, and it's so weird. And in the movie they would have these moments where they were like on nose to nose, like holding each other's faces. Like I don't think I've ever touched my cousin's face in my life. It was so weird. And then he has no chemistry with any other characters, and even in the book, like him and Lucy, like most of the time they're talking, they're kind of debating instead of like having a normal conversation, like you said, you know. So I thought maybe was inspired by the book itself, honestly. Spoilers
for real, starting now. So here's the things that I wish were different, because this is a prequel. You know, when we're doing a prequel, I would assume and expect more world building. And what I'm talking about here is we see Corey at school, and I want to know where the fuck this school came from. Why are people from the districts going to the school? It's very unclear. What are they learning? What are they doing? Are they managing the districts? It's not even clear. Like, I would love to see that. And I don't even think we see any of that in like the original Hunger Games. I mean, I haven't seen those movies in a really long time, so maybe I'm totally wrong. Just yell at me. And I thought we would see more details on the war itself, but we start 10 years after the war, so we don't even know like the stakes or the state of the Panem. We don't even really see that, which I thought we would get a lot more of as a prequel to this series that we already understand, the Hunger Games. Additionally, I want to know more about the districts, specifically District 13, because that is a huge plot point in the original trilogy where, from my memory, it seemed like that district tried to rebel spell or something, and then the government basically bombs the shit out of them. They're gonzos, but they're not really gonzos. They are underground, where Katniss, you know, thrives in the Mockingjay film. So I'm just like, why wasn't that what is happening here? Like for a prequel, that's what I expected to get, and I felt like I didn't get any of the information that I wanted as a person that wasn't prepared to see the movie anyway. So yeah.
Well, I will say a few things. I don't think it should be a requirement that you've read the book to see the movie and enjoy it, you know? So I do definitely think that's a knock on them. Like, if people who haven't read the book feel like they should have read the book before going to see the movie, to me, that's a detriment, right? But I will also say, to explain some of this stuff, because they do go in depth about the school, the war, and like why they're in poverty and all that stuff, and like District 13 comes up. All of that exists in the book, but they cut all that out for the movie. So the school is the academy, and it's in the capital, and it's mostly capital citizens who go there, and like the kids of people at the capital. It's a very prestigious academy. The reason the one guy is there from the districts is because his dad had a weapons company in District 2 that he sold weapons to the capital and made money during the war. Think like Lockheed Martin. He's like a gazillionaire off of like building weapons. He basically bribed his way into the capital. So it really is very hard to move from the districts to the capital. You basically have to be supremely wealthy. As far as District 13 goes, it comes up because Coriolanus's family also had a weapons manufacturing company. That was also where their money came from, but their factories were in District 13. So when District 13 was wiped off the map from Coriolanus's perspective, they lost all of their investments, and so they don't have money anymore, but they're trying to like keep up appearances, because in the capital, money is everything. So if you don't have money, you're like not a person to them. So he's like trying to like keep up this air that they're still this like very wealthy family, but they lost all their money when District 13 disappeared.
I just feel like that is such an important part to put in the beginning, rather than have that weird fucking flashback of cannibalism at the very beginning of the movie. I would have much rather seen, I don't know, 13 get destroyed, or like his dad. Like they kept talking about his dad, and like they were talking about the shadow of him. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't even really a person. Like I didn't care about him as a viewer. Like where is that connection to the audience? Like obviously the characters feel that, but I don't feel anything for the father. It felt really underdeveloped as a movie goes, but yeah, maybe I'll read the book.
I loved the stained glass window they had of his father's face. That was such a weird touch. The first time they mention his dad in the movie, it just cuts to like a stained glass window of his dad's face, and he's just like, I was like, why not a painting? Like yes, rich people had like paintings of themselves. Like this man had a stained glass window of his own face. Like that, I want that in my house now. Bring back stained glass self-portraits. One of the things that I mentioned kind of in the no spoiler section was that I felt like they kind of left out this whole chaos control and the social contract idea. Suzanne Collins goes into this in depth in like the post questions that are in the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition. Not sponsored. She talks about how the different ideals of the characters are based off of real life thought leaders. So there's this guy, I forget his first name, but his last name is Hobbes, and he wrote the Leviathan, and he was a firm believer that human beings were very animalistic and that we need a strong government to control us. And that mindset was instilled in Coriolanus and a character we haven't talked about yet named Gaul, who is like the head game maker, head evil person. And then Locke, who was one of the early kind of founding father thought leaders of all men are created equal, all white men. Anyway, his mindset is instilled in Lucy and Sejanus. And then the Covey, which they don't even really go that in depth in the movie, are supposed to represent Rousseau, who wrote the social contracts mindset, that the reason we all behave is because we all are trying to follow this social contract to each other. So we don't want to be exercised. And I feel like they just didn't go into any of that at all, but I sure do in my video. So if you want to hear about it, you can check mine out. But I was missing that, and that kind of disappointed me. After, like you said, it's like they spoon-fed some of the message, and they just outright be like explicitly saying the message of the movie, but then they somehow missed these huge things that were in the book throughout the whole thing that they just left out. It was very confusing. I don't know how they chose what to include and what not to.
So one thing that I noticed in the movie regarding the cinematography, and I know this is something that is used in a lot of like villainous movies or characters or themes and stuff of angles that are facing upward at people, but this happened a lot in the movie, and I understand that they probably want it to feel like we know that this guy is going to be President Snow, and we know we already don't like President Snow or the Capitol, but I didn't exactly feel that kind of emotion or anger towards this character while we're looking literally into his nostrils every other scene that's, you know, trying to make him menacing. It was just really off-putting. It felt like a child was holding the camera trying to film all these actors. It was very strange.
I will say, you mentioned there about how he doesn't seem that evil in the movie, and that's interesting because one of the things that I complimented about the book is that I really didn't want to read like the Joker set in the Hunger Games world, like sympathetic anti-hero, like this is why he's so broken inside. Like I did not care for that at all, and I was kind of emotionally prepared for it to be like that, but I was actually really happy that it wasn't. And I think the way that Suzanne Collins has you root for him in the book is so interesting because you don't like him. You're reading his internal monologue, you're reading how he feels about the districts and how he's like just firm in the belief that the people in the Capitol are just inherently better, and everything that happens to the people in the districts is because they're district and so they're gross. But she makes everybody around him worse, and so you're still kind of rooting for him because you want him to succeed, and I liked that a lot. And I feel like in the movie they did a really good job of giving him motivation for his actions that you might not necessarily agree with, but you understand. So he wasn't like a sympathetic anti-hero as much as he was just a character with proper motivation for his actions, which you'd be surprised at how often that doesn't happen anymore, you know? So he doesn't actually seem like that evil a person because you understand his worldview and his mindset, and that he's always going to prioritize self-preservation over other people. So when he makes all of these decisions out of a sense of self-preservation, it doesn't really make you as angry as you'd think it would.
So bouncing off of Mr. Snow, his character, it seemed to me like he was, you know, obviously the snake. And, you know, we have this other Lucy Gray character who's literally singing the entire movie in a country accent. And she's obviously the songbird. But one thing that you were talking about earlier was that there's a snake and a songbird in each of us. And I think we kind of see towards the end of the movie where she kind of becomes a snake in a sense, where it's kind of implied that she might have tattled on him to the Capitol. And so she kind of like baits herself as someone to kill, like as prey almost, and then she like escapes off or whatever the fuck. And I think that was a really interesting point that you made. There is kind of like a balance in everybody, and maybe that's the point of the story. I don't know.
Yeah, I think what Suzanne Collins said she was like trying to get across in the book, and I feel like she did a good job, is exactly that like we're all a blank slate when we're born, and it's our experiences that color our behavior in life, and that we're all maybe capable of being very animalistic, but we're also capable of being very loving and like filled with community. And so that to me was at least where the songbirds and snakes came from, was like for most of the movie or book you see him being the snake, her being the songbird, and then that kind of flips at the end. And I think it shows like why that title is there and the fact that that's in all of us.
So since we have Lucy Gray being this songbird, there's a song in the book that I guess is written about the events that happen in this story. And we see this happen when he finally becomes the peacekeeper. He goes to District 12 and he sees this person, this rebel, being hanged. And then some girl in the crowd is like trying to save him or something. And essentially the Hanging Tree song is kind of developed from that story, which I think is really cool. But I think it's even cooler that it almost exactly reflects President Snow's experience, because we see him standing not only at that hanging but at a future hanging when they eventually capture his friend Sejanus, as well as two other rebels where there's 3 people being hanged and he's there. And then the following morning, he escapes with his love, Lucy Gray, to run away. And it basically tells the story of like what happens there. So I think that's like really cool. It's almost like cyclical of the story, like going around and around.
The other thing I thought was really cool about it when I was reading the book, when the hanging tree song came up and they explained where it came from, because Lucy writes it about a hanging that they watch. I thought it was not only cool that we got that basis, but then that she sings that song to him during kind of their final showdown. Because when you think about it, 64 years later, when the Capitol is rebelling and he's being taken down, I believe there's a scene in Mockingjay where they all sing that song. Are you coming to the tree? And so then you have to think about like how he now feels in that moment. Like he knows the origin of the song and he knows the girl that wrote it. Oh, in the book, the Mockingjays, he hates them. And that doesn't really ever come up in the movie just because they didn't have time, I don't think, and you're not seeing his internal monologue. But when you're in his head, the Mockingjays make him really uncomfortable and he doesn't really know why. He's just like, I think they're an abomination and I don't want them around. And to me, I thought that was a really nice touch because the Mockingjay ends up becoming the symbol of the rebellion in the original trilogy. So it's like he has this almost premonition that this is going to become the symbol for what eventually takes him down.
So let us know what you thought of the movie if you've seen it. Let us know what you think of the book if you've read it. I probably wouldn't watch this movie again. I think I would only watch it again if I did like a Hunger Games marathon, but altogether I felt like it was a little underwhelming for me personally. Again, maybe you should go read the book before you go see it. What are your final thoughts?
For me personally, I liked the book. I definitely had to power through parts, but I enjoyed it. And I think part of why I enjoyed it is because I'd so freshly read the original book and I could put the connections together. There's a lot of really smart things she did, and I just think she needed an editor maybe. She probably worked with one, but when authors reach that height of fame, the editors aren't as harsh on them, or the author has a lot more sway as to what's taken out. And I think they could have afforded to have consolidated the book a lot. And I did enjoy the movie, but I did already know the plot going in, so I didn't get confused. And I just thought the main guy was really hot. So, and he was a really good actor. I thought he did a really good job.
But thank you so much for watching. As always, we'll see you in the next one. Go subscribe to Meredith's channel.
If we met up at midnight in the hanging